Okay, so we had talked about those Super Nintendo games that were data mined from the NES application that's currently on the Switch. It's not been a super popular application, especially in the month of January, which we'll talk about for a few seconds here, because it was very underwhelming for the month in terms of games that were added, but we kind of have to look at it to see what the update also could have brought us for those Super Nintendo games. If you missed it, there were about 22 Super Nintendo games that were actually data mined in that NES application, and it kind of pointed to, or at least we believe that meant that games were coming soon because they're currently titled in the code for the application, which is exciting, obviously, because I think a lot of people would like Super Nintendo games to also be added, as there were some seriously good games in the Super Nintendo library, specifically RPGs. Now, if you remember, we saw some good ones in there. Breath of Fire 2 apparently is like part of it, which is really cool. And then, of course, some of the classics like Link to the Past, Super Mario World, Metroid, the list goes on. And we're going to go over that list because in that update for January, the very underwhelming one, which, you know what, I'll just show you actually really quickly here. Blaster Master was one of the games added. We had special edition, or the special edition of, what's that, Ghosts and Goblins. And then we also had Ninja Gaiden got a special edition, and then Zelda 2, The Adventures of Link. And the special edition ones appear to just be save states that push you right to the end of the game. And Blaster Master, we had Blaster Master 0, and then a lot of people didn't even just didn't really like Zelda 2. I remember they wanted you to buy, like, Nintendo Power to help you out, and if you didn't even get the manual with it, good luck. Like, if you rented this thing, you weren't probably not going to finish it. But if we look down the list, there are some good games here, but a lot of people want more than just NES games. And, of course, Nintendo has a bit of a, I guess, responsibility, especially to investors and consumers, to continue evolving this platform. And it seems like they're going to do that. So with that update, it appeared that they also pushed one that was not something we could see, but something that was being updated in the background. Let's actually go over here to Twitter, where WePhone, who has actually been data mining, noticed that there were some updates that point to the games being almost ready for launch. And we have an event coming up that actually might be a good time to launch it around, which we're also going to talk about. But let's see what they had to say here. They said, more importantly, the Super Nintendo, or the SNES, descriptions are still in the latest NES Online update, and some of them are actually in English now. Now, they point out Super Mario World with an underscore and E. We assume that means Super Mario World English. And they show the text that was actually discovered there, which does pretty much describe Super Mario World as we would expect it to, since that's, of course, the text you'll see in the game, or I guess just in general with the description. Like if you go here, you can actually look at some of the description and everything for each game, so it makes sense that they would have that here. However, they made a discovery that it's actually Super Mario World that's the only one in English, as Super Mario Kart is actually in Spanish as well. So once they discovered that, they started to also look down and see, well, okay, if this is in Spanish and we have Super Mario World in English, what are all the languages that they have supported? Because usually, if you start localizing something and have it ready in all different regions and everything, usually that means you're getting ready for a large launch, which would actually fall into place for a subscription service like the NES Online Application, which I assume is going to have to be renamed, by the way. Like, it's called, what, NES Online? Unless they have a whole nother application that's like Super Nintendo Online. But I feel like that would point towards the subscription model starting to break off, and you have tiers like, do you want the Nintendo, do you want the Super Nintendo, do you want the N64? Well, it's this pricing, this pricing, and this pricing. And while I think that is a future we're going towards for Nintendo at some point to change the price, I think that would become complicated. Yeah, that's the best word, complicated. For that to happen, I think they'd be better to go to a $10 a month setup with a ton of games from their entire history in all different systems, rather than make you pay almost like a cable bill where you have several different tiers. However, this is apparently all located in this NES application. So, at least for now, this application might be renamed to like Nintendo Online, which would actually work. It would actually make sense to have it that way rather than NES. Which is weird that they even named it that in the first place, by the way. I wonder if they knew they were doing this in the first place. But anyway, let's look at what they ended up finding was they ended up making a screenshot here that really shows how many games are actually, what appears to be ready to go. Because if they're all localized with different languages, that kind of means that they're pretty much ready, just about. What's odd, though, is Super Mario World is the only one that is in English. Anyway, let's look at the chart here that WePhone had posted saying that existing language descriptions as of January 16th. And it looks like there are quite a few there, and they are speculating, and something that I would think as well, if they've localized and put descriptions in all different languages, these would probably be the ones ready to go at launch. And remember, we talked about how 22 had shown up in the code. However, that doesn't mean that that is 22 that's set for like the year, like running at 2 or 3. They would probably want to launch with, especially if it's its own application, they would want to launch with a library, much like what happened with the NES, that had 20 that started. Maybe they have like 16 or 15 or 14 Super Nintendo games, and a few of the other ones are ones that are going to be tiered and dropped in as we go along, like the NES. Anyway, Breath of Fire 2 appears to be ready, as that's been completely localized minus English with the descriptions. And then down from there, Contra 3, Demon's Crest, still an interesting one to see, by the way. Demon's Crest. A very expensive game, too, by the way. F-Zero, Kirby's Dream Course, Kirby's Dream Land 3, Kirby Superstar, Mystical Ninja, Pilot Wings, Poppin' Twin Bee. And they skip Star Fox 2, and Stunt Racer FX. Those do not appear to have anything outside of Japanese descriptions, which made me wonder if Japan will get their own games along with this. Because remember, they got a game this month that no one else got in the NES app. So who knows if any of these... I'd hate to see Star Fox and Star Fox 2 not show up like everywhere else, but who knows. Super Ghouls and Ghosts, Super Mario All-Stars, Super Mario Kart, Super Mario World, Super Metroid, Super Punch-Out, and then down to Link to the Past. It's interesting to note, though, that All-Stars has what appears to be Italian and Japanese, but nothing else. I did wonder if Super Mario All-Stars would be also dropped everywhere, but at least there, it looks like it only has 2 languages for the descriptions there. Now, going further down, they had some final notes. They also not sure why English is missing. I would say that English is probably something, as people are starting to speculate, that will be dropped in closer to when it's ready to go. That would be my assumption, and we can kind of talk quickly about the window that they could drop this in, and I have a few ideas about that. But they also go over some final notes with Stunt Racer FX and Super Mario All-Stars had no Japanese description in the December update, so those just showed up apparently after the December update. Super Mario World had an English description for all languages in the December update, so keep that in mind. And then all localized descriptions in the January update tracked above were not present in the December update. Those appear to have been added in this January update that kind of dropped. Again, underwhelming with games. However, it seems like they're getting those Super Nintendo games ready, which is exciting. Obviously, we all want Super Nintendo games to be dropped in. It's more value. It makes sense. But to see a large amount get dropped in would be very exciting. And I wonder if Nintendo's going into their investors briefing wondering how they can get the investors excited for subscription services, because I think something we've all learned over the last 5 years is that investors like subscription service. They like recurring revenue schemes and ideas, right? That's what they really like, because it's guaranteed money every month. And of course, you can continue building that base and continue getting money every month, every year. Currently, I guess it's also a monthly service, but most people would just pay the $20 and be good for the year. However, I've said before, and I'll say it again, I think this is going to evolve into a Game Pass situation to where you pay monthly, not necessarily yearly. So like $10 a month for a large amount of Nintendo games, I think personally would be better than drip feeding and having a few games for $20 a year. I think it'd be good to have something like Nintendo with Gold thing where you get a few of these, like 2 per month. But if you have a very large library of Nintendo games that you subscribe to for $10 per month, I think that'd be personally better. I'd actually sign up for that and be excited to see N64, GameCube, all kinds of stuff get thrown in there rather than just, well, Nintendo games, 2 or 3 a month. It's underwhelming at this point. But Super Nintendo games, especially Breath of Fire 2, that's the one I'm excited about because I think a lot of people missed that one completely. And of course, younger generation now definitely didn't see a lot of the Super Nintendo games. And then it's also worth mentioning that the online for the NES, we assume, would carry over to the Super Nintendo. So you could have things like, of course, Mario World online. You could, I guess you'd be able to have F-Zero, I guess. That'd be fun. Mario Kart. There are some cool games that have multiplayer on the Super Nintendo that would be fun to see on this application using the NES or the online service. But let me know what you guys think about this situation, because I think we have something happening soonish. I think it's either going to be in the next week or two, we'll have some kind of Nintendo event, and then we'll head into the investors briefing with Nintendo having dropped a bunch of games, a bunch of release dates. Because right now, from what they have coming up, we don't have a lot of confirmed release dates. So I assume they'll want to do that before the investors briefing, because guess what they'll be asking? If they don't have release dates and plans around the subscription service, they're going to ask about that. They're going to grill Nintendo about it. So if I was Nintendo, I'd want to go into that investors meeting with a triumphant announcement of Super Nintendo games, some cool games coming to the Switch, maybe a 3DS game. I don't care. But let me know what you guys think about that. The Super Nintendo game is possibly being added, definitely being updated in the background. It does seem like they're getting ready for something, so it's exciting stuff nonetheless. But let me know what you think about this, guys. I will leave a link to the Twitter thread here down below. Make sure you guys like the video if you liked it, dislike it if not. Guys, I'll see you in the next video.